What's up, everybody? It looks like my timing's just a little bit off. I think I sent the intro a little late. Maybe you guys got a sneak peek of my pretty face before we went to that intro. But anyway, the church bells are ringing, which means it's noon, which means it's time to get into the show. We've got something interesting today. We're doing this on the State of Flow website, honestly, because the Atmos YouTube channel needs another phone number. And so I couldn't set up another YouTube channel because I have too many. Anyway, I'm figuring out how to set up the Atmos YouTube channel, but I figured this was relevant to State of Flow because State of Flow is, as you'll learn, going to be the first Atmos network, right? It's the first use case for this software that we're building. And I'm going to explain how we kind of got into this. How I got started with this idea, where this idea came from, kind of my background getting up into here, and then we're going to do a full feature demo. So I'm going to run through a few things. Let's get into this demo real quick. What's up, everyone? I see you in the comments there. I appreciate you, Dale Jensen. Shane, what's up? Isabel, Sean Duval, good to see you. Kabarza's in the house. Hello, hello. So let's look at this real quick. We're going to do a quick story about how we got here. An overview of what we're building. Like I talked about, a full feature demo. Colleen's in the background, so we'll be answering questions. If you have any questions, this is what I'd like to do. If you guys have questions about use cases, about specific functionality, anything in particular that you've seen us talk about, we really want to use this video. I'm recording this on the back end too, to chop this up into little nuggets. I want to vet pieces of this with a crowd. We're kind of in a early stage live testing, not just with the product itself, but with the story we're telling. How do we find our product market fit, et cetera. And so anyway, that's how it's going to go. So a couple of my favorite quotes we're going to start out with. These are the quotes. These are the quotes that drive me on a regular basis. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed individuals can change the world. In fact, it's the only thing that ever has. This ties into a lot of the stuff driven around community that I focus on, and you're going to see how that's played a role kind of over the last couple years. And then to follow the path that others have laid before you is a reasonable course of action. Therefore, all progress is made by unreasonable men. I really think this, and you're going to see maybe some of you think I'm a little unreasonable sometimes, or a little opinionated, or a little strong in kind of how I see the internet and the way things are shaping around us. But again, I hope to paint a good picture about why I think that's important to do and why I think it's relevant to the cause. So a quick story about how we got here. We're going to go back in time a little bit, all the way to 2009. In 2009, I was 26 years old. My life kind of just fell apart. I lost a job in insurance. Found out my wife was cheating on me. Had to move into my mom's basement. Like, kind of a lot of things blew up. This is the same time, right after the 2008 financial collapse. It's 2009, so we're like right in the heart of it. Very similar to the time we're facing now, right? And so I see a lot of the chaos and things happening around me, and it really takes me back to some of the things that I went through to kind of reinvent my career path. And part of the goal for what we're trying to do is to bring and make it easier for people like that to find ways to put their creative output online and to monetize that. That was a real big struggle for me back in that day, figuring out how to like make a living and do what I was going to do. And so I don't want to dive too deep in the story. And actually, we can probably put these resources in the show notes, but there's an interview here that I did with the folks at Reloom, and then there's the Great Design Lead episode that I was on. If you want to dive deep into those, we do talk a lot about kind of the fall from grace. But essentially, I went from a six-figure income to working inside of a kitchen for like $14 an hour. I moved back into my mom's basement, and I spent the next couple years trying to get back on my feet and figuring out how to reinvent myself, starting to experiment with technology and web development, et cetera. Again, very interesting stories that I've covered in other streams, so we won't get into that today. Oh. We're not going to play the stream. Sorry, Josh, if you're in the audience, but go check that out on your own. Okay, so in 2012, so as I go into that, 2009, I'm starting to reinvent myself. In 2012, I started learning how to build websites. I was in the WordPress space. I started blogging, and I went viral. I literally went crazy. This article, 7 Reasons Why You'll Never Do Anything Amazing with Your Life. If you Google it, you'll find lots of references, tons of traffic. It was a wild time. There were other articles and stories and videos and things that were kind of going viral. And I thought like, oh, great. I broke in. I had been spending a couple years trying to learn about technology. I was learning about WordPress. I'm putting some of these dots together, and I'm thinking, this is it. This is the path to like internet success. Here we are. And it turns out false. There was nothing other than hype. What I learned is that lots of media companies were taking my content, putting it on their website, driving traffic to that through advertising or arbitrage advertising, and they were making money off of that content, but all I was getting was a link back to my website, a little bit of traffic, and a high five from people because I had gone viral or whatever it was. And the things that the ecosystem was not as evolved as it is today to be able to monetize content, to be able to like throw up an e-commerce store, to be able to start a membership or subscription. I mean, think about it. This is 10 years ago, right? More than 10 years ago now. And so none of these tools that we're kind of used to seeing around us today existed. And so that's where I started thinking, like, there is a system here of flawed incentives. And I actually wanted to play the first minute of this video here from 2015 that I titled Restoring Trust in Media, because it has some relevant cause. In 1835, John Hershey pointed a powerful telescope of vast dimensions towards the moon. He was in an observatory in South Africa. He claimed to see giant man bats collecting fruit and holding animated conversations, goat-like creatures with blue skin and a temple made of polished sapphire. At least that's what readers of the New York Sun were told in a series of newspaper reports. Those reports increased their subscription from 8,000 to over 19,000 subscribers in the course of, in a day, a couple days, right? So they took over at that time the Times of London to become the world's best-selling daily newspaper. It was all a fraud, obviously. It was just intended to drive subscriptions. At the time, the New York Sun was the first newspaper, first media company, if you will, whose business model revolved primarily around advertising. Okay, so just a little history lesson there in context. I mean, since the beginning of the advertising model, it has kind of been unchanged. You've heard me talk about this before, but essentially it works like this. You build the biggest audience you can and then rent that out to others for a fee. And even in our modern day, with all these digital creative tools, it's still almost impossible for new creators to monetize their online content. And as you saw in that little snippet of the video, this leads to exponential increase in hyperbolic content. If your goal is only to increase the size of your audience so that you can rent that out to more people for a fee, then your goal is incentivized to say whatever that audience wants and build the biggest audience you can. And this is why you're seeing modern media kind of change and shift. We're going to talk about that a little bit more as we go, but it does need an exponential increase in hyperbolic content and the proliferation of distrust at scale, because now we have a fractured storyline, right? And so most people who make big money online do so from endorsements, collaborations, consulting, et cetera. This is something else I learned kind of doing the online thing, is like you go viral and you don't really make money from the advertising. What you do is you know, like even just now you're seeing this, all the course bros, that tell you how you can make millions of dollars online by buying their course. This is how a lot of people online do it. They build a little presence, they build something beautiful, they go viral once, and then next thing you know, they're sharing their story about how they can help other people do that. That's where most of the creators make their money online. Even now, influencers make it with brand deals, with endorsements, with products that they sell on their website. They drive traffic to their own properties. And really, the only people extracting significant dollars from any of this current creator economy are the top percentile of creators and the largest platforms themselves. It's not sustainable, right? The mechanism for earning dollars from your creative output has kind of been monopolized by these big tech giants. And there lies kind of the thesis for what we're trying to do with Atmos here. So this got me thinking that there has to be a better way for creators to work together to monetize their online content at scale. So I began tinkering with web publishing and new media in my local community. Remember, this is still back in 2015. So as I started to understand how these things worked and how publishing worked and how these media companies worked and how they were leveraging this online output to kind of build their digital presence and kind of grow and do their thing, I was like, there has to be a way for us to kind of consolidate and own this. And so I started tinkering in local media. And because my website was kind of going through the roof on my personal side, I started doing traffic comparisons to like local media companies in Sarasota. And I started realizing that my personal blog was actually bigger than most of the local media companies in our town. It was doing more traffic, it was getting more exposure, it was like lots of things. Now, it wasn't relevant to Sarasota because I was kind of reaching a global audience, but I started to realize, oh, you can do something here. And so what I did was I took all of my Sarasota content and I shoveled it into this brand called Sarasota Underground. And I started connecting like local events. I started doing meetups, hosting, you see pictures from this town hall here. We put together a huge town hall. It was so much fun. We made politics fun in our local city. We got some young people elected to city council. We started doing these creative salons. So I started realizing like, oh, community is really powerful. And if you blend it with a little bit of video, with a little bit of new media, with a lot of online content, you can do a lot of cool things. And so I started realizing like, you can move the needle here, major ways, right? So, but a lot of that was actually, I skipped a step here. A lot of that was in an effort to kind of build marketing and excitement for the first version of what Atmos is today, right? This thing called Radio at the time, ray.do. And the software never really took off. the market wasn't really ready, and we were trying to build too much. We were trying to build the whole CMS, the whole thing. This is why you see that it's important that we're plugging into Webflow as a first step for getting this thing off the ground, is because we were trying to build the entire CMS and a lot of things that came with that. And so the software never really got off the ground, and it was really early in the market. Back in 2015, people were just starting to see glimpses of what's happening now, and they didn't really realize how perverted the internet was and the incentives that power our information distribution mechanism. But here in 2022, 2023, we all know what the deal is, right? And so also something called COVID happened shortly thereafter. So by the time this media stuff is operating, we're in 2017, 2018. Next thing you know, COVID comes, shuts everything down. I go all into online stuff. So I learned a couple things. Although the software never really took off, this is what pushed me into Webflow in the no-code space, because I was looking, okay, there's got to be better tools for people to build things on the internet. I also learned that community is everything, and the ability to organize a community, you can do so much with that. And so we went in all in. This is why it was appealing for Joe to bring me on into FinSuite in that early days to kind of get that off the ground, because community, as we can see, is a big part of how marketing machines are moving forward into the future. So I learned that community is everything. You can do a lot with online video content and a compelling story. I also learned that business models around media are broken at scale. This was the biggest takeaway. Building software is obviously hard. But I wasn't ready to give up. I was not ready to give up. The idea was too big. There was too much going on. And that's where we are now. Two worlds are currently colliding. What you're seeing is old school video production, media / local organizing guy that stumbled into the internet, that corporate sales, background, who's now figuring out, how do you tie these dots together? How do you take a little bit of the sales? How do you take a little bit of the community organizing and take the online publishing, mix that all together into one cool little pot that we can use as creators to use that organized effort in online ways to leverage the way the internet works to really take this thing to the next level. So Atmos is a very big idea, but we have to start small to kind of get this thing off the ground. And that's where you all come in. That's where kind of this early stages of what we're doing comes in. And that's where we're going to start. So we're super early in the development process. This is going to be invite only for the next few months. Some of you have already gotten access. Maybe y'all see this little tab on my screen here, but the extension is live, and I can see comments from different folks in the community here already. We're going to go through that in just a second. You can request an invite over at atmospr.com. The PR is short for atmosphere. So atmospr.com. There's also a little story I'm playing with because I'm from Puerto Rico. And so maybe PR has something to do with that. Anyway, just fun little tidbits, but people have asked, where's the PR come from? Atmos. It's kind of short for atmosphere. And we'll talk about the atmosphere of the internet and how that plays in by the end of this. So you can request an invite if you want access. And there's two real core things to keep in mind as you think about Atmos. Right? There's two chunky things that you need to think about that we're trying to fundamentally disrupt. One is syndicates versus follower model, and I'm going to explain how that's important, and then also talk about anchoring the activity to the root URL, which you should all be familiar with as people who build on the web. So let's dive into syndicates versus followers for a second. This builds on existing social and online infrastructure, so we're not trying to get people to abandon their websites or abandon their social media or pick up the next social platform and leave Twitter or leave Facebook or TikTok or wherever they want to be. No. Keep all that. Keep your emails, keep your websites, just plug it in, right? Just connect some of the dots. And so syndicates, if you're familiar with an old school radio model, is about sharing content and syndicating someone else's content, but helping build your brand around that. There's another stream that we did, I think, titled How the Internet is Broken. It was one of the first State of Flow streams that gets deep into that. So we're not going to go into it. But anyway, we'll share the link in the description. But the idea is that we shift from a passive to an active relationship. A follower relationship basically means the content flows in a single direction. The person at the top shares something, and if I follow you, maybe I see it, if the algorithm approves. But that's a very passive relationship. And now we're working in a world where people want to take active roles in helping other people succeed. This is what community is about. This is what a community is about in general, right? It's about building a framework for you to succeed as a group rather than as an individual. This is literally the definition of community. And so a community of people sharing content is going to be called a syndicate. Right? So it's an active role, and it puts the power back inside of the creator networks. And we're seeing things like this all over the place already. So I just saw today that ConvertKit rolls out something called Creator Networks. This is very similar to a syndicate model and confirms that other people are thinking about how to let creators work together in unique ways online. So basically this lets you tap into new audience networks. Exactly what we're trying to do here, except for this sits inside of your ConvertKit sign up forms. So again, ConvertKit limits you to where you can use this or how you can use it or who you can approve or who you can invite into your network. They have to already be using ConvertKit. They already have to be in this program. There's all these hurdles, but they're trying to do the same thing here. Join forces. Why focus on competition when you can learn how to complement each other and how you stand out? Think about the other newsletter subscribers are probably signed up for and reach out to that creator to get started. Okay, draw this parallel into the world of Webflow. How many of us are building Webflow audiences or building Webflow tools or building around the ecosystem? And we all see each other at these different events. We all see each other at line on these live streams. But we're all operating in silos. You have a website, he has a website, she has a website, that community has a thing, they have a thing over here, and it's like none of it's interconnected. Imagine a layer that sits over top that just connects all these things and allows you to expose your friends, your peers, the people you want to recommend to the other folks, but it does so in an environment you control, on a web property you control, in a context or visual reference, again, that you can control. Pay it forward. So remember the first who took notice of your content and shared it. Be that person for an upcoming creator. A lot of what we want to do, a lot of the reason like this Webflow community is so strong is because we learned this powerful tool online and then we want to share that with others. Well, why not do this in the space as well? And you see that with content. You see somebody makes a great video and lots of people share it because we want other people to see this great content. And so that's what a syndicate network is about. It's about leveraging that momentum, but channeling that, focusing that attention into a very specific way. You also see Substack looking at this. Substack has a huge section on their site here about how to collaborate and all these tools they're building in where you can like create guest posts and tag other people's Substacks. That way there's links to their Substack inside of your Substack. There's podcast guests. So again, you can add different authors and people into the episode that are in Substack. But again, this is all inside of Substack's infrastructure. This all looks and feels exactly how Substack wants it to look and feel. And that's okay, but it's not what we want as folks who are building the things on the internet, right? As people who understand the freedom of a website, as people who understand the value of building your own URL, controlling the brand, building that ecosystem. What if you want to add a store onto that? Can you add a store to Substack? No. Can you add a store to Patreon? No. Can you add a membership? No. Can you add Logic? Can you integrate Airtable? Can you do all these other things? No, right? So all of these existing solutions force you into a specific platform and a specific form factor. So we want to take it one step further and kind of offer all those tools, offer all those functional benefits, but do it inside of, again, infrastructure that you own. Okay, so going back to anchoring the social activity. So going back to what you own the URL. The reason you buy a custom URL or a custom domain is because that's your real estate on the internet. That's the place of the interstate. You're planting your flag and you're saying, Raymmar.com is mine. Stateofflow.io is ours. You know, like these things that I'm building, that we're building, this is the place on the internet where you can find it. Just like if I'm going to go to a friend's house, I'm going to look up their address and I'm going to pull up and Google's going to tell me how to get to their house. Well, on the internet, I type in a URL and Google tells me how to get to your online real estate. And a lot of us, you know, I guess in the web space, we understand this, but we don't really, like, the general public doesn't really understand this yet. You know, the most people are not interested, and that's because it's complicated to build these things. So anchoring all the activity to the root URL is breaking free from the walled gardens, because social media kind of extracts the URL and then puts you into their walled garden, and then all the social experience happens in their walled garden away from that URL. We've talked about this before. We think that if you shift those anchors towards the URL, you actually start building long-term value, again, in your online real estate. And those neighborhoods, which is what the syndicate network is, if the URL is your house, your real estate, then the syndicate network is your neighborhood of those houses kind of connected. And you want to build a nice neighborhood, right? You want to build a park, you want to build cool things, the shared assets, you want to build a community center, you want to build nice roads, you want to build nice infrastructure that allows those houses to kind of like call each other, share internet, all these things, surrogates on the internet. Okay. And so you don't want to like live in a neighborhood where people are burning houses down or talking shit or, you know, like fighting all the time. Like you want to live in a nice neighborhood. So you want to encourage people to build trust in those digital neighborhoods. And again, that's the context of tying this all to a root URL layer. And the tide is turning in online media. So we see it all the time. We see these podcasts. We see YouTube's kind of becoming the influence networks. We saw political candidates launching their campaigns on Twitter, inside of Twitter Spaces. You see a proliferation of influencers and Patreon and Substack, OnlyFans, subscriptions, memberships, etc. It's all on the rise. Everyone is trying to figure out how to take how to participate in this growing creator economy. And there's a growing focus on niche media and high quality content that speaks to a very narrow audience. Again, very focused, very specific, but trustworthy. This is what peer-reviewed journals used to be, or what they could be, right? So people starting to understand that they need to own, again, their URLs. They need to own that place where it's housed, so that they can't be censored, so that they can add the monetization element, so that they can kind of take advantage of all the other benefits that come along with building online real estate rather than renting it. So there's a big problem though. Building these things online is complicated and technically challenging, right? We understand that. That's the lesson I learned from my experiments before, right? Was that building software is hard. And so the solution is make it easier for people to build things online that they can own and monetize. Well, there's other people that are already making it easy for people to build the things that they can monetize, or that they can, build online. Webflow is doing it. WordPress is doing it. Wix is doing it. Framer's doing it. Airtable's doing it. Notion's doing it. Like, all of these companies are already doing parts of these things. They all have APIs that serve up content that you can talk to, et cetera, et cetera. But what they don't give you is a beautiful shell, fully customizable, that can connect to that with some social features that allow you to kind of interact. And for all I know, like, Webflow doesn't have a comment layer, and they don't have plans to build commenting layers. Neither does Raymmar, and neither do any of these sites. Even WordPress comments are kind of trash, and there's all sorts of systems use like some other type of system to do this, or you put people in a Discord server or some other way to engage the community. But again, it separates the people from the URL. And so what we want to do is kind of bring those things together. So here's what y'all all are probably here for. And we're going to finally run through a full feature demo here. I'm going to see if I can change this real quick 1 second, because I'm getting my screen real estate. I'm getting too much. Okay, it's not going to work, but no worries. Okay, so full feature demo. First, I'm going to run through the 4 core feature elements inside of Atmos. Then we're going to walk through a couple live demos. So tags is the first concept here. Basically, you can add a tag to any page. Think about hashtags, but for the open internet. And so these eventually, right now, they're fairly simple. Right now, it's just a hashtag. It lives on the page. Again, it's attached to a URL. Soon, as we roll out, we'll talk about the roadmap a little bit at the end here. This will become a very feature-rich bookmarking tool, right? The ability to organize web pages, to add context. You add this with notes, and you'll be able to kind of remember how many times you go back to a web page, like, have I seen this? No, yes, maybe. Okay. How many times do you leave a bookmark and you never go back to it? So finding ways to rediscover these bookmarks, to put this stuff in context. And also, maybe if you find something really cool, feature it in some kind of, marketplace, some kind of aggregator, some kind of website, which again, we're going to show you the value of that here in a second. Notes. So leave a public or private note on any website and help us add a social layer of context to the entire internet. So you see here, Isabel, I think she's in the audience. What's up, Isabel? Left a note recently on runway.com, which was gaining traction on Twitter. And she just asked a question about it. Again, that lays in context. I think I can open that up here. If I go down to Isabel's note, we see comments here. So there's a whole conversation kind of happening on top of that note. It's cool to see. Right now, it's a kind of a static text conversation. But again, soon this will be, think live Discord chat, live, whatever, real-time conversation in the browser over top of any URL. The reason this might be interesting is we just saw like the Apple WDC event, and that was happening on YouTube. Imagine a small cadre of tech writers wanting to have a private little chat layer where they invite folks in to be a part of their little community. And now they're having in-context chat, totally separate from YouTube, completely private, only accessible by the folks that they want to see that chat. And now you have a social engagement layer that sits over top of any URL that's anchored to that video. So if someone gets access later on and wants to go back to that video and see the conversation, it's there in context. Again, very important, very pivotal to kind of the core function of what we're doing here. Okay, networks. So the next step is networks, right? You have tags, notes, that kind of lives in one tab, and then networks are how you start inviting other folks. This is how you start connecting Webflow, connecting destinations. So networks are how you invite contributors to help you grow your online presence. This is going to be kind of like ground level, where you'll be able to set custom permissions for where people can publish, what they can publish, what destinations they can publish to, a little bit of nuance about the different collections and destinations and things like that. And so this would be a great way to kind of have to give people access to your web properties. And we're going to talk a little bit about how we're doing that right now. And then destinations. So the networks connect to destinations. So those destinations connect your network to any structured database, right? So if it's got an API, we're going to be able to plug into this. You'll be able to send this to any place where you want to store structured data. So we're going to teach the world about structured data. If you think about Facebook and Twitter, they all talk people about posting online in social ways, but there's no structured data. There's type it and add a picture, add a video, whatever. But a lot of times, if it's a recipe site, let's say, you might want to grab specific data about what you're sharing. Let's say you're sharing a URL. Maybe you don't just want to share the URL. Maybe you want to share the recipe in context with your friends who like recipes. And so you want to grab the ingredients and you want to grab the instructions and you want to grab all these little details and structure that content on the page semantically and send that into a database. This is the tool. Okay, so let's go, before we go to roadmap, let's go to show y'all a little bit here. Wish me luck, live demo time. Why is this doing that? Ooh, you're not my friend right now. It's like adding this whole extra layer of chunkiness to the top of my browser, which is pushing it down in my recording. Okay, enough of that. So let's say I like this tweet. This tweet, today we're going deep on Atmos. And I think y'all have seen me do this before, but let's go into this network here. I need to refresh because this thing sometimes messes up when you zoom in. Just so you know, if you're using it, that happens sometimes. All right, so Atmos network, I'm gonna collect this tweet. So right here we've got our, you know what, actually before we do that, let's not clip the content. Let's show you the Atmos tab. Let's show you all this in context here. So tags, this could be Twitter. This is simple, right? You just add a tag. This would be Raymmar. Boom, and we'll submit these. And now we've got Twitter and Raymmar. Right now, it doesn't show, okay, it shows that I'm in the Atmos network. But right now, it's not necessarily showing me the URL yet. We're working on a fix where this will actually link you out to the specific URL where the tags were added. So there's a lot of kind of little things coming here. Same thing with the note. The note you leave here, it's based on the context of the network you're in. So if you want to leave a public note, you go up here and switch to public, and now this note will come out here and be shared as public. Public is visible by anybody, right? So Reloom, I think this is Dan here. Dan was playing with the extension yesterday, left a note on TechCrunch. And again, if I click on that note, it takes me out to the TechCrunch website. If he would have been on a specific URL here, that would have left a note on this specific URL, and then I can sort by URL specific, but obviously there's no notes here yet. But if I, let's see, this is an interesting article about Jack Dorsey. Okay, hello, Jack. So now we have a note here about Jack Dorsey. Again, if I go all activity, I'm going to see all the activity. But if I go URL specific, I'm just going to see this one note. And so again, adding context to the specific URL soon, talking about roadmap stuff, you'll be able to select and highlight content. I mean, you can select content right now and it goes into the little screen here. And so this will grab and it'll replace the URL with your selected page content. But yeah, soon you'll be able to kind of leave maybe even audio snippets. Imagine being able to browse the web. And I don't know how soon this is coming. Don't quote me on the timeline, but the goal is to imagine leaving audio snippets, right? Instead of listening to a podcast, you read an article, boom, you leave an audio snippet here and you got 20 seconds in context about why this is not true, or maybe like a Loom style video, any kind of digital context. So as you start exploring popular websites, as you start exploring the news, you could start seeing this atmosphere of the URL as people start adding context and as people start layering their thoughts, again, over top of a structured URL that comes to, that leaves a note that's just tied to that specific URL. But then, like, let's say I wanted to grab this article, like I was on Twitter here, and let's say I wanted to grab this and send this to the Atmos network or the Atmos website, because on the Atmos site, I have this update tab, and if I come here, I have this little updates tab that I'm just clipping interesting things about the Atmos launch that people might want to see in context here. So maybe even this video is going to pop in here after that. And it's kind of like an activity feed of just atmosphere stuff. And I built this just as a simple use case, but let's go to Twitter. I'm going to grab this URL here, source URL. We're going to grab that there. Eventually that could get dynamic. Let's grab the image. So you see I'm just dragging and dropping from the page. That's a great feature. Description here. Let's see. First, let's see what we're going to call this. Learn about Atmos during our live intro stream. Intro. Okay, video link. We don't have a video link, but because this is a Twitter URL, and I just learned that it'll embed that, I'm going to put the Twitter URL in the video link field here. And then a title. This will be called Atmos Intro Live Stream. Bring your Webflow CMS to life. No, we don't. We want that. This is a tweet about Atmos Intro because I'm going to share the video and I don't want those to be the same. Okay, so I'm going to publish that. And now this can be used to curate content. This can be used to create original content. Like right now, I'm just kind of grabbing stuff from the page, but I don't have to. I could, write a blog in here. I could create whatever content I want. So I refresh the page and here it is. Tweet about Atmos Intro. Learn about Atmos during our live intro stream. Again, when I click, it takes me here. Now, this is not Atmos on the left. This is Webflow. This is 100% Webflow, right? So this is 100% Webflow CMS. This is a video embed element. I could log into the website here and show you that this is just a little sidebar that I've built in Webflow. You see Atmos on this side kind of replicating the tab, but it's not. And so this is just the form factor I've chosen for this website, but there's other form factors. I've shown you this no-code video website here. And so let's say I'm on YouTube, I find this cool video from Flux Academy, and I want to bring that over here. I'm going to kind of click into that video and grab some assets from the page. All right, so let's do that. Actually, let's mute and let's have it. We'll let them talk in the background, but we won't listen because moving video is better than still pictures. Okay, so show more. Let's see. We're going to grab some context from here, but again, I could rewrite any of this if I wanted to put it however I want it to appear. So maybe I want to spin an article. Maybe I see the descriptions not as exciting as it could be. Maybe I see the thumbnails not as exciting as it could be. Maybe I see the image is not as exciting as it could be, and I want to kind of add a little bit of more, funkiness to this thing. I'm not doing that now. Again, I'm just showing simple use cases here because we're live and I don't want to break anything. But let's see, what's this about? This is design. So I'm adding tags. These are all Webflow multi-reference fields here. Design. Let's see. Design. We'll do web design. Let's see. I don't know what else. That's enough for now. And these are all switches. So highlight video, main feature. I won't click those because that'll put them in different places on the site where I don't really want these to be. Let's see if I can grab some of the content here. So I typically grab, if I share somebody's links, I grab everything so that they can, if they have calls to action or anything inside of here, I like to put that in there so that it passes on with it. So you'll see those things come through here as well as the chapter markers. And I won't fill out any of the rest of this because that's not for what it is here. So I'm going to go ahead and publish this. Fingers crossed. Bingo, bango. Come on, baby. Note to self, sometimes it takes a second. Or did something mess up? Ooh, do I hit a publish again and risk a duplicate entry? Let's try it. Oh, the wonders of live testing, y'all. Okay, it looks like it may not be going, but let's check just in case. Yeah, it did not. Okay, well, in theory, that would have sent a video to this website. That's how all these videos have gotten there over the last couple of weeks. And again, just showing another instance, another use case for how and why that should do what it's supposed to do. I'm not sure. We'll check in and see why maybe that's not actually going. We'll check with the devs here after the stream. But anyway, back to the slide deck. So that's kind of a little overview. Roadmap. We're kind of working right now to update how the Open Graph details are stored inside the notes. So right now, when you open the notes, you don't really see what the website is about. You have to click to the website to go see it. And what you can see is when you open this on like a website that has Open Graph details, it'll pull that. So we're going to pull this content and share it in the notes. So the notes become a little multimedia rich. Eventually, those will be embed cards. So if you do pull a YouTube or leave a note on YouTube or SoundCloud or something that can embed, you'll be able to enjoy the content right in line. That matters because eventually we would love the idea of being able to send filtered feeds into different places, coming directly from Atmos, or even imagine having a browser, not a browser, but a mobile app that people can enjoy your feeds from. This would be great for content creators. This would be great for people who want to build, again, channels to their audience that drive traffic to their websites, right? Social channels that feel interactive, that drive traffic back to their websites. But are also multimedia rich. So imagine having feeds that embed a YouTube and a Twitter and Instagram and a whatever, all in one feed about a specific topic curated by somebody who you respect, who you get as a digest. That would be much more engaging than an email or a newsletter or something like that. And again, it could be real time from the browser like that. So that's kind of cool. Notifications and user digests are things we're thinking about. So a lot of what we're doing here, like these notifications, I saw this conversation with Isabel was kind of like, getting some action, but I did not actually, was not notified about those yet. So that's something we're thinking about, is how to notify people about activity inside of the app. Advanced notes filtering. So again, imagine being able to come in here. Right now you can sort by URL specific. So you can see I left a note about this Google Doc or all activity. But imagine if I could just show my activity, or if I could sort this by tags, or if I could then just add some advanced filtering over top of this activity feed. There's an eventual vision where this becomes a web application, where you would be able to then organize and see all of the notes you've made and kind of interact with those notes in maybe some kind of visual canvas. That's far down the road, but just to talk about kind of where we're headed. Custom networks permissions. So we're talking about, again, being able to limit which collections, which Webflow sites, how people can kind of access the different destinations. Maybe yes to Airtable, maybe no to Webflow, maybe yes to Twitter, maybe no to TikTok. I don't know, right, how these things will connect, but having some kind of custom permissions. We talked about the multimedia embeds. Thinking about what other destinations look like. We don't really have a roadmap for what those destinations will be. We're focused kind of on Webflow right now. I think Twitter will be another quick one that we add, primarily because for our use case of the State of Flow website, imagine as you are publishing to State of Flow, when you share something through the Webflow part of this extension, it spits out a tweet on the State of Flow Twitter account as well. And so that turns the Twitter account into an asset of State of Flow that becomes part of the syndicate network. And so now all syndicates would have access, by virtue of being invited to publish on Webflow, to have access to our Twitter account. That could be cool too. And so again, how do you daisy chain these tools together to allow people to kind of like play in a sandbox, but build their web presence together, pointing back at their individual goals. So as each of their individual goals grow collectively, so does the strength of the network. Bam, you get this like positive feedback loop, and it could be really, really powerful. So just to reiterate, we're currently focused on Webflow, but soon you'll be able to add other destinations accessible through APIs. We're thinking about some of this that we can open source or decentralize. So maybe other people will be building into these APIs or building there. Like Atmos could become a social layer that just plugs into lots of different things that other developers start using. Instead of building some kind of social feature or some kind of something that connects to whatever, build something that connects to Atmos, which lives in the browser and drives people back to the user's end destinations, and allow every platform, like every new platform that uses Atmos, allow them to use their audience themselves. This is where the activate your audience comes in from, the audience themselves as a distribution mechanism. I think that really the only way to compete with Google or Facebook or any of these major companies as it relates to digital advertising is to bypass the platform itself, the display network, and turn the audience into the display network, and then incentivize the audience to curate and really value who and how they share information with, just like we do with referrals and like business recommendations and things like that, but with our online content at a certain extent. And then leverage those tools to, again, activate the audience and point people back to your calls to action and online goals. And so that is the root core of what we're trying to do here. I think that's a lot. We just crammed a shit ton of information in the last 40 minutes. So with that, I'm going to stop and see if there are any questions from the crowd. I've got, let's see, we can bring Colleen, and she's been listening in the background. So we'll bring her in and let her share her thoughts if she's got anything that I missed or anything that you think we should also share over top of anything that I just talked about. And then if you've got questions, I'd love to hear them. If you think we're stupid, if you think we're dumb, wasting our time on this, if you think the idea is like silly, if you think it's great, if you are interested in using it, whatever, we would love to hear all of those things. So yeah. Colleen, any thoughts?
Just that I'm excited, and I mean, not to sound like a broken record, but I am excited. It's been a long time coming. It's still, I mean, it feels like a long time to me, and I'm sure even longer to you. You kind of started going back to the sort of origins of this during the stream. but I think there's just, as creators, that path of being able to have an idea and seeing it come to life and then starting to see other people use it is just very exciting. And a few folks here have been early testers. Thank you very much for that. It sometimes feel a little bit like a dagger in my heart when there's a bug and it's not easily fixable, but I can't say just how important it is to have some friendly faces who are with us on this journey to share those bugs and share their feedback. So we are all ears on feedback.
Here's some feedback. Star says this is a Chrome extension or a life story. I honestly thought about, like, do I actually share any of that? But I think it's relevant to the purpose of the extension. I think it's really relevant to the mission here. And so, yeah, trust me, it could have been an hour just on a couple of those years alone. The amount of information I condensed into those first 10 minutes of life story was was nowhere near to the whole story. But I appreciate you, Star, for checking in. Hopefully, you did appreciate the extension and stuff when we finally got to that. So the vision is huge. Jonathan, yes, agreed. It is. It's one of those things that's hard to like fully comprehend at a glance. It's even more difficult to try to think about like what copy to put on a website to get people excited about it. And then it's like, do you get people excited about the big vision and then they sign up and it's not that and then they leave? Or do you tell people like, come activate your Webflow CMS and, bring your website to life? And it's like, okay, well, that's not that exciting, but whatever, And so it's like, so we're kind of stuck in this weird place where it's like, we have to tell people about what it is we're doing currently and how you can use it currently. But again, going back to the life story comment, it's about sharing the goal and where we hope this thing is headed so that people can understand that there's like a lot of room for this thing to expand. And there's no part of me that thinks this is going to be some kind of viral sensation that's just going to like tomorrow be on Product Hunt and have millions of users. There's no world where I think that's true. When and if this thing becomes popular, it will become popular because networks like State of Flow have used it in a very interesting way. Because some kind of creator networks have really built something amazing. They've built the next Wall Street Journal. They've built the next Huffington Post. They built the next whatever intermedia company here, Substack, Patreon, Leader, whatever. And people will ask, well, how are you doing that? And they'll be, oh, it's part of the Atmos network or something like that. We're aiming to be infrastructure here. I'd rather be, I make this analogy a lot. I'd rather be Oracle than Facebook. Let's put it like that. Oracle powers a ton of the internet. Nobody knows about them. You never hear about this. They're never in the controversial news. Nobody's talking shit about Oracle, but they are talking shit about Twitter and Facebook and all these other platforms because, again, they're very opinionated in how they treat the information and what they do with that. Whereas, some of these other companies are just infrastructure. And so we just want to be infrastructure for the future web. We want to help folks understand the atmosphere of any given URL. And we want to build tools that help them kind of monetize and pull their creative community together. Like when you're in a local community, one of the things I learned, if we go back to that Sarasota Underground story, is that if we work together, we can do cool things. We can volunteer, we can host a cool event, we can like accomplish things in a group of 4 or 5 people in our town. Even if it's just go pick up trash, we can pick up way more trash if there's 10 of us than if it's just me. And so you learn that like if you get a few people to just join you in doing a thing that all kind of like to do that thing anyway, you can like do more of that thing. And the internet's kind of like a cool surrogate to that, except for all the social media platforms took that model and they were like, put everyone together to build our thing. And it's like, and that's kind of cool at a certain level because it got us here. But to get to the next level of the internet, we gotta break that monopoly up. And we need to have, some kind of creative style revolution where we just say, hey, we're going to take over from here. Thanks. The infrastructure exists. We got you. And then we start figuring out how to monetize these things and we start starving Silicon Valley a little bit until we learn how to feed ourselves. And then once we, as creators and the people who are building this thing called the internet, this beautiful thing called the internet, once we figure out how to like feed ourselves and turn this thing into a mechanism that helps us, then, you can start figuring out, what the things are to build from there. But we cannot continue to exist in a world where the internet basically siphons all of the creative output of everyone that touches it and feeds that monetization opportunity to a small select group of people at the top. That's just not sustainable. especially as AI rolls into this and it gets easier to scrape all that stuff up. So this is fundamentally important to like intellectual property, to our freedom as a species, to our, you know, like sovereign independence as individuals. Like this is again, it's Jonathan, that's not an understatement. This is a huge vision. Love the history of the start. Great. Thank you. Ideas cool and a lot of work. Yes. So much work. So much work. Okay, so here's the cool thing. What do they say? Shoot for the stars and maybe hit the moon? Even if we don't do any of that, even if we don't figure out how to be the, you know, how to save the internet or whatever we're, you know, rambling on about here, this will be a cool tool. Even if we just get to 1,000 users and we get 1,000 people to plug their Webflow websites into this thing, and we have all these different people creating and building and doing their thing inside of Webflow, that'll be a success. So I'm not of the mindset that like this has to be the next Twitter to be successful or the next Instagram or the next big thing in any real way. I'm fully aware of the fact that this could be a great business with a couple thousand users, and it could be very valuable and helpful for lots of people, even if we never reach those thresholds. So that's kind of the fun of it for me, is that we already have a product that can deliver a ton of value. As we refine and kind of figure out the last steps of what this thing is and can do, and kind of really get to our first production level release. These are all alpha releases. So I don't think it's going to be a hard thing to build a business around some of the features that we have here. The question is, can we take it to that next level? That will be the real big question. Jonathan Holden, how's this being funded? Brother, lots of grit. Lots of grit and good people. Yeah, that's a long conversation for maybe another day. But there have been different iterations of how this is being paid for. But right now we are, just kind of being super scrappy. So there's no big investors. We're not sure we want any big investors. This is kind of coming out of my pocket, the developer's pocket, and the community around us. And soon we will kind of figure out how and what we want to do to bring that to market as we think about how do we need more funding. There may be some community things that come from that. We may give the software away for free and charge for the community layer just to join and be a part of some of what we're doing. And we may at some point consider outside investment, although we didn't want to take money early on without a product, without momentum, without like a real thing, because we didn't want to give away a bunch of this. My vision, I'm going to put this on the record early on, is that nobody owns this thing at the end of the day. I'd like to own a piece of it, right? And I think you'd like to own a piece of it. And I think that's what we're going to try to figure out how to do, is to make this infrastructure for a shared economy in a lot of interesting ways. But there's a lot of IP things to figure out with that. There's a lot of legal things to figure out with that. It's going to take us a while to kind of figure out exactly how we want to do this and grow and scale the entity. What we're trying to do right now is build a solid foundation, spend the next 4, 5, 6 months building solid case studies. If you go to the Atmos PR website, I'm going to close these things, close the drawers. You can see that the no-code site is featured as a featured network. State of Flow is as well. And then there's this Break Records network here, working with a buddy of mine who's out in LA with a emerging record label to help him also put a network together. We're talking to different folks in the community about how to put networks together for them. And so we're going to spend the next few months really organizing some early stage networks, validating case studies for how we take this to market. Because it is such a big idea and it takes a lot of kind of meat to understand it, we want to show people what the output is rather than tell them about it. And so to do that, we need some good case studies. We need some example sites. We need some example networks. And so again, if you're interested in getting involved in this, whether now or in the future, go over to the atmospr.com website, drop your email here, and we'll start. We've already started sending out invites. There's a slow process. We try to do some batch invites and there were some issues. So now we're doing some one-on-one onboarding because it's not super seamless yet. There's just a couple nuances with like connecting Webflow and doing things that the UI is it's not perfect yet. So just buyer beware. You're jumping into a unknown territory here, and we're building 100% from scratch. There's no code here. This is not connections to Zapier or anything like that. This is from the ground up. Some pretty interesting software we're building. So okay, let's see. Bootstrap for the win. Yes, we hope so, as much as we can. Let's see. I've been so used to working on my own and more or less lurking online in my small ways. I've seen the value of being in community. I just need to get spend. Let's see. To speed on how to embrace and continue. Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of the same energy that you see on like your Twitter feed. I could see popping into here. One of my favorite things is just to pop in and see like what did people check in on, right? Like Eric the other day was over here on SEM Rush. And it doesn't show in context. This is going to be so cool. Imagine when I click on that link and it shows and highlights, that card, and then comes here and it shows me URL specific, and it just shows me Eric's note that he left on that page. So if I want to come over here and grab the title specifically, you can see I can select and it'll pull that title into the note here. Or if I wanted to pull just this section here and grab it in, select that, it's going to grab the content. And if I leave a note, this is a note in context. So it'll add it here, URL specific. Okay. The filtering is coming, don't sweat it. Okay, so again, imagine when I click this, if it comes here and it highlights the text and shows me the comment, again, in context. Like, there's so many use cases for why somebody who's doing something, researching the web, like think about all these newsletter people who are doing newsletters. Newsletters are great, but newsletters, I got to wait until you hit publish and this thing, and it's like, okay. And then the newsletter is usually links out to the website. So why not, instead of a newsletter, real-time context layer that's only active to my network, right? So you still have to be a subscriber to see my notes in real time, or wait till my newsletter. Or as I'm doing this, you could follow along and then see my notes in your browser. And so as things move fast, let's say in the financial markets or in news, right? Being able to, again, see things in real time, in context, from a bunch of different places. Imagine I'm a news person, I'm a news hound, and there's a breaking story, and I'm running around to all these different websites, and I'm just clipping these news. You now can see a curated feed. And what if I want to subscribe to a feed that's only about that one thing? I don't want to go to YouTube. I remember, what was it? During the George Floyd stuff, I got onto YouTube, and YouTube's like feeding me all this other shit. And I'm like, fuck you, YouTube. I don't want to see that shit. I want to see this stuff, like this only specific thing. And I didn't want it from like all the different places. I just wanted a feed of like YouTube videos around this one topic. And you could go to Twitter, but now you only see Twitter content. It's like, okay, what if I could have a feed that's Twitter content and YouTube content, Instagram content, and all these in one place, right? Just filtered by this one topic. And so that's where I think those activity feeds could get really exciting. And again, then when you come and click, it shows you in context. And then there's the whole issue about how do you then take this over to mobile and whatnot, but those are problems for another day. So right now it's a browser extension, y'all. Soon it will be a mobile app. And I say soon in the context of like, I've been working on this since 2009. So soon for me is like a year. Okay. So take that for what it's worth. Jonathan Holden, what's the stack? This is built in TypeScript and Angular. Yeah. And some other backend languages. Jeff, jumping in late for about 10 minutes or so. Excited to catch the replay and dive into Atmos. Yeah, Jeff, I'm super excited to have you. I think you got an invite there, but yeah, this is going to be an exciting little project. We're excited to have you. Thanks for stopping in here. Jonathan Holden, I'm just sitting here shaking my head, mumbling, this is genius. I don't know if it's genius yet. If it comes to life, people might give us a nice little pat on the back. But I think right now it's just kind of like some convoluted dream sitting inside of mine and the team's head. And we're just like, how do we make this real? Jonathan Holden, this is Web3. This is Web3. This is, a lot of people talk about Web3. A lot of people talk about, crypto and blockchain and blah, blah, this token, that token, whatever. But this is Web3. This is the idea of the creators building and owning the internet. This is aspiring to fulfill the promise that the early internet made to all of us. And really something I think that is important to how we continue to scale as society. So, Baltazar, hi everyone, just started watching and already looks very interesting. Excited to try this out. Great. Yeah, as a reminder, you can go over to atmospr.com and just drop your email at the top of that website. That's where we're aggregating this. Don't be don't be turned off if you don't hear from us immediately. We are slowly sending these emails out. We're just building the email workflows for this stuff, so we don't even have the automations yet built to tell you thank you for signing up and all the different things. But those will be coming here in the next few days. So, yeah, what do they say? If you're not kind of ashamed to launch your first version, you're not doing it fast enough, you're not doing enough. So I've been around this space enough to know that if you wait until all these things are perfect, you wait way too long. And we've already been waiting a long time to put this out in the world. And so you're gonna see us just going hard at putting things out there and kind of stumbling over ourselves, and then putting more things out there and stumbling over ourselves. And thank you for being guinea pigs. One day we'll look back and be like, damn, that was cool. And it'll all work, and you'll be like, oh, this is amazing. And you won't even remember the, time where we were on the live stream doing a live demo of this product and it didn't send. Baltazar, loving the branding. Thank you. Yeah, there's a cool story behind the brand too. Some of y'all have seen that were involved with some of the design with us and some of the branding efforts, but you'll see the story of the brand and the pulse and the people and the paths and the networks and all that, the core kind of come together. So I think that's it. Anybody else? Any other questions? Any thoughts? I know we're a little behind on the YouTube. I didn't hit the super low latency today, so I think there's a little bit more delay than I'm used to, which is why we kind of bumbled the intro a little bit. But all good. Colleen, any thoughts? Did I miss anything out? Anything that you think we should share before we unplug here, before the construction starts and kicks us off our microphones?
Yeah, our hard stop that we can't control. No, I mean, just we're definitely all ears on feedback. I mean, one of the things that I think is really special about sort of the no code space and building in public is, just going back to Raymmar's comment a moment ago about, if you wait too long, if you feel like it's perfect, you've waited too long to put something out there. And so you do want to have some of those warts. We're trying not to have super bad warts out there, just because we don't want it necessarily to be a bad experience. But this is not like a to-do list app where everybody knows what a to-do list app should have. This is a lot of moving parts, and it's thinking about and doing things in different ways. And we are struggling a little bit with language and messaging on some of that stuff. So the more questions that there's no dumb questions, and you're just, asking those questions is going to be a help to us in terms of refining the product, refining the messaging and our focus and all those things. So we're all ears.
Yeah, maybe some of y'all saw that we did this build space thing and we were super excited and we were going to have users and blah, blah, and compete and prizes and then we ended up withdrawing from the competition, mostly because of some of what Colleen was just mentioning, that this isn't one of those like simple to understand apps that everyone's seen before. That's just another version of something that already exists. This is like a fundamental rewrite for how the incentives work online. The end product is the same. Users will not notice the difference, right? Websites, like they will just experience URLs. But the functionality of the people building it is uniquely different. And learning the messaging for that, figuring out how we sell this thing. If you knew the amount of headlines I went through, if you've been watching this site with any regularity, you'll see like there's just churn on the headline, on the title. At some point, we should start maybe doing some proper A/B testing. But again, we're balancing this idea of sharing the big vision versus sharing what's useful now, because what's useful now is going to get us the users. But the big vision is kind of what's guiding us. And what we want to make sure we don't do is get a bunch of people stuck on thinking like, oh, you're building this thing over here, and then not be able to pivot to what the actual use case is. And so we're playing this delicate dance of like, what do we tell people this thing actually is? How do we really encourage them to use it? And how do we as a unit start testing inside of, an ecosystem or two to validate some of these things? So that's what you're watching. For anybody who's interested. I feel like there's lots of little clips that will be valuable outside of this stream. So I'm probably going to spend some time chopping those videos up. I think that's it. We'll leave this right at an hour. I appreciate everyone for tuning in and hanging with us. This is beyond, I don't even know how to like put into words the excitement I feel. If you were here for the beginning of the stream and you saw, it wasn't in 2009 when I came up with this idea. That's kind of when the world fell apart. But in 2012, 2013, might be interesting to have some talks about this, because there were some psychedelic trips involved. There was like a reorganizing my whole life at a high level. There's like life shifts. There's like crazy shit that came into play with like just exploring the web and reinventing myself from what was a corporate sales career as a design school dropout to now a tech person building random things on the internet. So it's going to be fun to kind of string this story together, and appreciate all your patience with kind of indulging some of those things. And yeah, I'm excited to see where this goes next. Right on. Okay. Bye, everyone. Yeah, we were like 12 seconds behind there instead of our usual like 5 or